Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Andy Linehan, president of the City Club. Welcome to the club and the sixth and final in our series on keeping Oregon's promise. Today we have Matt Hennessee, who is president and CEO of Quiktrak and chairman of the Portland Development Commission. Before Matt begins his talk, I have our usual few items of City Club business. Next Friday, February 27th, we've got a particularly exciting program. City Club will be welcoming Harvard professor and best-selling author Robert Putnam, and he'll speak about community engagement in a changing America. Professor Putnam is the author of Bowling Alone and more recently Better Together, which devotes a whole chapter to Portland and our neighborhood association process and civic engagement. Professor Putnam is an enthusiastic and dynamic speaker, and we're really privileged to have him here with us. So make your reservations online at www.pdxcityclub.org or by calling the office. Before you see Robert Putnam in person, you may be interested in attending City Club's Citizens Read book club, and we've been reading Professor Putnam's book, Better Together. On Monday, February 23rd at 7:15 p.m. at the Zimmerman Community Center, the book club will be meeting again, and Steve Johnson, a longtime Portland activist and a colleague of Putnam, will lead our conversation. So you're all welcome to that again next Monday at 7:15 at the Zimmerman Community Center. On March 5th, Governor Ted Kulongowski will deliver the State of the State speech at City Club on March 5th at the Governor Hotel. There are no more luncheon tickets available. We've sold the event out, and there'll be no coffee tables and really very limited general seating as well. However, we have begun a waiting list in the event there should be last-minute ticket cancellations. You can add your name to the waiting list by calling the club, and if you've already made a reservation, please go ahead and pay for it, and we'll mail you the tickets, and that will speed things up during the day of the event. After you hear Matt speak today, I'm sure you'll be inspired to ask, what can I do next to make a difference in Oregon? Well, one of those things is to join City Club today. And in fact, our speaker today, Matt Hennessee, joined this very day. So, good job. During this series, of which today is the last event, during the Keeping Oregon's Promise series, we've waived the normal $25 joining fee. So it's a good day to join, and if you wish, you can make the club membership payments on a monthly basis as a credit card withdrawal or withdrawal from your checking account. City Club offers numerous ways to connect with your colleagues in your city, but it all starts by becoming a member. So you can join online or see a staff person after the program or call the office. The Healthcare Issues Committee is embarking on an ambitious new topic, healthcare reform. Maybe it's not such a new topic. Anyway, over the next few months, the committee will be hearing from key individuals in the community who have been involved in healthcare reform initiatives. The next meeting of the committee will be Thursday, March 4th at 7:30 in the morning at the City Club office, and the topic will be patient safety. Everyone is welcome. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge past presenters and participants who helped make the Keeping Oregon's Promise series such a provocative series of speeches. At the first event of the series, Jack McGowan gave a speech that was everything we expect from Jack, impassioned, articulate, and motivating. Jack and Jan, if you wouldn't mind please standing up, and we can acknowledge you here. It was a really memorable event. Another memorable event was with David Yaden. He spoke to us about leadership. David, I know you're here. If you could, oh, there you are, David. And then Sam Nato. Sam, if you wouldn't mind standing up, and we'd like to acknowledge you're a great part of the economic development panel that we did as part of the series. And Doug Stam is in the back there. Doug helped on the community building event. Thank you. Broadcast of City Club programs this quarter is made possible in part by corporate underwriting from Pacificor, CH2M Hill, and Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt. We're very grateful for their support. Onto our program. Over the last 6 months, our Keeping Oregon's Promise series has examined our state through multiple prisms: leadership from leaders as different as Chris Coleman and David Yaden, economic development and job growth with high-tech financier Debbie Coleman and Sam Nato, Tony Hobson squared off with Mike Myslowski and Doug Stam over community building. Kate Brown and Mike Burton wrestled with the ever-daunting topic of financing public services. Ethan Seltzer, our moderator for all the series events, stirred the pot and added his insight and wit. Our Keeping Oregon's Promise series covered the spectrum of challenges facing Oregon, but I want to take you back to words that Jack McGowan spoke at the beginning of the series. Jack asked, "What will our children know us for? Apathy and the status quo? Polarization, inflammatory statements, leaving the problems we face today for the next generation to tackle? Or can we take upon it ourselves to actually do something to make Oregon better?" Jack McGowan began our series with a call to action. It's fitting that Matt Hennessee is ending our series with his own call to action and responsibility. Let me tell you just a little bit about Matt's background. He's not new to public speaking, as he began his public speaking career at the age of 9 years old by reciting Dr. Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech from memory, which he continued to do for many celebrations from then on. As you'll see, he's a person with a rich and diverse life. On the business side, since April 1999, he's been the leader of Quiktrak, Inc., an international company headquartered in the Portland area that focuses on financial risk management and technology. Before that, Matt had 8.5 years at Nike, and he was elected to the chair of the Portland Development Commission in July 2003. He's a very active person, serving on a number of boards and commissions related to all levels of education, from preschool to alternative education to college and university education. He recently celebrated his 13th year as associate pastor of the St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church in Portland, and I wanted to welcome members of your church, and particularly Dr. Faulkner, the pastor of the church, who've come to our event today. So welcome, Matt.
Good afternoon. Now, you know you can do better than that. There is no way I'm going to accept that as being okay. Mr. President, Andy, to Mike Burton, who's been my host here today, to the members of the Board of Governors. You know, you guys sound so prestigious. The Board of Governors, not Board of Directors, you know. Yeah. To our Executive Director, Wendy, who's a tremendous human being, to the City Club members, friends, and fellow Oregonians, both gathered here in this room at the Multnomah Athletic Club, as well as people who are listening in. Now, let me at least begin by letting you know a couple of things. First, I don't expect any hallelujahs or amens today. But if they happen, by the way, it'd be just fine. I want you to know that in case there are those who wonder if I'm half business person, half preacher, I'm 100% preacher and 100% business person. I don't know how you do all that, but I do. I also want you to know how much I appreciate the warm welcome that I've been given, and for all of those who are here today who were on the panel before. There was already enough pressure on me at one point anyway, but knowing you all decided to show up has only made it worse. Now, I want you to know that that I'm delighted to have this chance. I really am. But I'm feeling, as I listened to the introduction and read the material that was sent out to the City Club membership about me and my background and my being here, the bar just kept being raised higher, and it made me want to pray. I wanted to pray first to ask God to forgive the City Club for exaggerating so much. I wanted to pray second to ask God to forgive you as City Club members for being so gullible. And then thirdly, I wanted to pray and ask God to forgive me for loving absolutely every second of it. So it was really just fine. To those who are listening in or watching, quite frankly, from all around our great state, in Ashland and Astoria, Lakeview and Pendleton, Bend, Corvallis, and Madras, from the business person to the cattle rancher, from the cyclist to the mass transit rider, from Dunthorpe to Council Crest, from Columbia Villa to Linz. It's a joy, it's an honor, it's a privilege to address you as we conclude this series on keeping Oregon's promise. I'm deeply indebted to those who came before me, who set the foundation for my discourse with you today. They have shared their ideas with you and challenged you in areas about building community, economic development, job growth, leadership, and public service. And today my job is to wrap this up in this series, and while I'm very humbled and honored to do so, I feel somewhat like the senator in the story who loved the work of a speechwriter and complimented him all the time about the great work that he had done, but would never give him a pay raise. So one day, as he was about to give a major speech about why he wanted to run for re-election, a speech the speechwriter had written but not rehearsed with him because of lack of time, the senator began his usual way of addressing a crowd, and as he turned the pages, he addressed several major dilemmas of the day and how he had specific solutions for each one of them. The crowd was, needless to say, spellbound. Who wouldn't want to know the senator's thoughts about these major issues? The more he spoke, the closer they sat to the edge of their seat. He turned the next page where he would speak to specific solutions, and written on that page in longhand was a note from the starving speechwriter, which said, "You're on your own, you SOB." I share that story with you because what I also realize is that the issues before us, both in this series and in life, are not easy to solve. There are several ways to come at them, but the government can help only so much, and in reality, even we are on our own. What I know from the outset, as you do, that there are no easy answers. The lesson is that for all our good work, and for no matter how long, we're only beginning, for our work is never done. So what I promise is a conversation with you that at its end will confuse the linguists and put an exclamation point and then a semicolon on the end of what I have to say. Because I want to acknowledge the challenges, I want to talk about solutions, I want to proclaim new directions, but understand that we've still only just begun. As I look around this room, I'm reminded of something very important. For all our worries and concerns that we might have, like continually being criticized for not being more business friendly, seemingly less able to attract businesses from other areas, and wishing our educational system were fixed, that unemployment were lower, that labor and management were working more closely together, that there were less people hungry, that our tax structure was more fair, that we had stronger leaders, wishing that we had stronger leaders, one thing is still clear. We aren't going anywhere. We're staying right here because this land is your land. This land is my land. From the Steens and the Wallowas to the Ochakos. Don't you like that word, Ochakos? From the Cascades to the Coastal Range, from the Columbia to the Willamette to the Deschutes. From Mount Tilson to Mount Bachelor to Mount Hood, this land was made for you and me. And while my birth certificate makes me an Ohioan, my living certificate makes me an Oregonian. And I've stated it proudly, come what may. I stated proudly, come what may, for the last 15 and a half years, and God willing, it'll be many, many more. I'm convinced that if you live here long enough, being an Oregonian is almost like a religious experience. You're like a lion at the door, who's on guard rather at the door. You're here to defend the annals of history and the faithful who made its citizens passionate about its independence, environment, clean air, water, and beaches, passionate about the outdoors, the overall quality of life, and one's ability to raise a family. And though we may have all gotten here by different means, we're on the same team now, meaning, among other things, that we love the rain. Anything over 70 is too hot. Anything under 40 is too cold. When it's sunny, we're inside. When it rains, we're outside. We love the Ducks, the Beavers, the Blazers, the Rockies, and the Winterhawks. At the same time, we're defending all of this. We're also letting something else happen, and I'm surprised, given who we are, that we are. Because who ever heard of a people staunchly defending the education of their children, allow sustainable financing of public education be a problem and tax reform be elusive? Who ever heard of people passionately defending a person's right to independence allow outright assaults on human rights because of a person's color, being over 40, female, gay, or lesbian. Who ever heard of a people determined to be the best, allow its prisons to fill up, people who need health care not get it, and those who need mental health care be left out in the cold? But we've done it, my friends. You and I have done it, so let's quit looking out of glass and seeing other people as the problem and look into the mirror and see our own reflection. For it seems to me that the new Oregon Trail that leads us is not leading us to a land of dreams, but a land of broken promises and unmet dreams. We complain, but we won't vote. We feel things are bad, but we don't get engaged to find solutions. We think it's crazy that the gap between the haves and the have-nots is widening to an ever deeper chasm, but we allow political polarization and gridlock to guide our fate. See, if I don't get an amen from you, it's fine. My church is here, right? In the rural, suburban, and urban communities around this great land we call Oregon, we need Republicans and Democrats and independents. We need Greens and libertarians, labor, management, business, educators, rich, poor, the middle class of all races and gender and creeds to sit down together and agree that no matter what we're going to do, we're going to find solutions. We're going to find attributes to a brighter day, and we'll stay at the table of discussion and negotiation and implementation as long as we have to until we are successful. That's our challenge, I believe, and our overwhelming responsibility. And for as ominous as this seems and as daunting as the task is, I believe the real message is our vision and our energy should force us to play at the top of our game and be determined to win. Why am I so optimistic, and why am I not daunted by the work at hand? Because I'm just ignorant enough, positive enough, ready to work enough to not let borders and barriers alter my beliefs. I feel this way in part because I think that Lee Iacocca was absolutely right. There are three kinds of people: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what happened. I think about it this way. Many of us in this room remember Phil Donahue dominated. There are some of you who wouldn't remember Phil Donahue dominating the daytime talk show airways for years, but others do. But then came Oprah, and she changed the whole talk show hosting on TV forever. She also changed the profitability quotient for advertisers and affiliates that carry her show. Eleanor Roosevelt completely changed the role of First Lady simply because she was determined to be different than others who had come before her and found her place of contribution, and many First Ladies after have done the same thing. John Kennedy got us to the moon in record time only by uttering the words, and he did not live long enough to see it. Tiger Woods revolutionized the game of golf in a fortnight and brought people to the game on TV and to the galleys who had never been there before. Rosa Parks got the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. the Nobel Prize for Peace simply by saying no. Michael Air Jordan changed the level of the game on the court simply by saying, "You can't stop me, you can't ever stop me." Scores of sung and unsung pioneers throughout history have changed the course of this city, this state, and this region simply by having dreams and ideas and working relentlessly to make them a reality. It is upon their spirit and their shoulders that we stand today. It's on their successes that we can build on, as I believe organizations like Solve, Meyer Memorial Trust, the Murdoch Trust, Friends of the Children, Volunteers of America, the Morrison Child and Family Services Center, SEI, Open Meadow Alternative Schools, VBI, and countless other foundations and organizations around this state, helping people and protecting our quality of life. Do I have an answer, then, for our high unemployment rate? Our tax system? You're thinking about the senator now, aren't you, in the story? Our malaise over what to do about almost everything? The real answer is, no, I don't. But I do have a few dreams, and I do have a few hopes that begin to get at these daunting issues. In the end, you may think that I'm only almost right, but I'll take the plunge anyway and believe that with you and with your help, that we'll get it all the way right. My friends, it starts with leadership and having the courage and the tenacity to hang in there. Being willing to take risks and learn lessons and teach lessons and listen and grow, admit mistakes, take responsibility, show up and ready to be successful come what may. You know what's also important? It isn't going to be better tomorrow unless you and I get engaged today. While we can point to some great inspirational leaders of our past or visionaries of our time whose insights sustain us and on whose wings we've traveled a great distance, it's time to make room for new leaders at the table with great ideas, great hope, tremendous energy, and great talent. They must have a seat at the table. And let me quickly remind you that as you do, these people are going to be more female, more of color, and more multicultural than the generation before them. And as tough as that might be for some of you to visualize, I believe we'll all be just fine. Our politics must become more inclusive, more open, and more genuinely Oregon. One of our problems is the average person isn't sure for whom to vote, nor that voting really makes a difference, because candidates seldom come back to their neighborhood cafe, their church, their barbershop, their beauty salon, their school, and etc. to find out what they think. But I believe that we must dream and put positive energy behind making those dreams a reality. What do I dream about then? And what do I wish that we collectively would dream about? I dream about possibilities and what we want to become. I dream about how we stake out our ground in the world. It's time, I believe, for a new coalition of consciousness, clearly acknowledging our problems didn't just show up last night, and the solutions will not show up tomorrow. But we must begin right now, and we should take a long view of change and create a vision that says we start today, but we recognize our roadmap is for the next 100 years, something that I choose to call the Oregon Century. And to ensure that we put our generation's positive stamp into the history books, our focus should be on the following. First, an implementation of a rational tax system providing stable revenue sources to support our state's priorities. You don't have, yeah. Second, implementing land use planning processes that protect our environment while supporting economic growth. Third, an educational system that's not just concerned with slogans like "No Child Left Behind," but a system that realizes our children's future is dependent on more than just a test score. Now, I want them to be concerned about the whole child so that they acquire more important life skills, to be decent citizens, socially active members of the community who are less likely rather to end up on public assistance or our criminal justice rolls or worse. Like many of you, I don't want to pay one more dollar in property taxes or income taxes to house prisoners. I don't want to do it. But what I am willing to do is to pay more than $100 more per month in property taxes or income taxes to educate our children, because I know that we'll be building a stronger, richer, safer Oregon. I believe that. If you'll let me digress here for just a moment, to reinforce this as an area of passion both for me and one in which I have some experience as chairman of the High Scope International Preschool Education Research Foundation, study after study after study, and countless of them have been made, show clearly that without equivocation, that $1 spent today on education saves as much as $7 in social service costs to taxpayers. And my question is, what part of investing $1 and saving $7 is hard for us to understand? You educate a child, you educate and nurture a child today, you get a productive citizen tomorrow. It's just that simple. Next, well, we're setting a national vision to get to Mars by 2013, which is an absolutely fine goal. But I want us to do something a little bit more simple than that before we get to Mars. I would like to figure out how we can learn to walk the earth as brothers and sisters. I just want to do that. Not only do I want to do it, but I figure if we're heading to Mars in 2013, we need to figure out how to walk together by 2010. I think it's time that we figure out how to rid ourselves of the horrible and debilitating cycle of racism, hatred, and bigotry that too many people want to pretend isn't there. I hear too many people copping out these days saying things like, I wasn't there and didn't do these things, so how can you blame me? I'm not responsible. Oh, yes, you're responsible, all right. You and I are responsible. And if we don't think we're responsible, we will allow this system of behavior to continue for years to come. I say we are responsible. Let's begin to work to rid ourselves of racism, bigotry by the year 2010. If not everywhere else, then why not here? We're all here together, you see. We must figure out how to get along because you like the same beaches that I like. When I walk on the beach in Oregon, everybody speaks to me because I speak to them. I make you speak to me, as a matter of fact. The Oregon Century focuses on economic vitality, productivity, technology, and job growth, supporting our critical institutions like OHSU, Providence, and Legacy Health Systems, and the Oregon Health Plan, the port, and the number of workforce and economic development systems and programs and initiatives around the state. To sustain our higher education system, our natural resources, and maintaining the livability of Oregon as we grow and develop and encourage such things as entrepreneurship, to support our historic industries like Gunderson and Freightliner and Intel and countless others around this state as we embrace our future. We build upon opportunities with the Pacific Rim and Europe and support the green industry in every way possible to continue to nurture the amazing opportunities we have in the green industry to lead worldwide. I want us to continue to focus on the harmony and the buoyancy of a hate-free environment and enjoy its broader economic benefits all over the state. I'm intrigued by the possibilities of the biosciences, the nanotechnologies, investment made in our infrastructures like roads and bridges, the chance to build upon our global sports and fitness infrastructure from the ingenuity of Nike and Adidas and Columbia Sportswear to marathons, rock climbing, skiing, nature walking, and windsurfing. I know there's somebody who wanted me to say baseball. Major League Baseball, anyway. Next, I dream of entrepreneurs who want to expand their business, particularly as it relates, to an acquisition of capital. To find it here in Oregon. Let me say that one more time. To find acquisition to capital here in Oregon and not have to look to Seattle, San Francisco, or New York. I'm in no way speaking ill of those equity funds who are already here, but I'd like to see more opportunity for all of us to succeed and keep the dollars here in Oregon. Next, politically, particularly at the state level, I want people running for elected office who have a chance to be in Salem long enough to help make momentous change. I'm convinced that it takes at least 2 or 3 sessions to really get it. I'm always speaking of Oregon politics with pride, really, because we're one of the few electorates who don't get personal. We stick to the issues. I love Ron Wyden's statement that you can campaign in the rain, but you don't sling any mud. That's one of the things that makes us great, I think. However, what would make us greater is to honor and encourage the political landscape to be focused on bold ideas, visionary thinking, and precision execution, and not worry about the polls. Ronald Reagan, whether you agree with his politics or not, was not successful because he had the best programs. It was because he had the ability to communicate his ideas in such an effective way and endeared himself to the American public that Congress had no choice but to agree with him. Next, I dream of bridging the gulf between the urban police and its community. I say that having spent 12 years of my own life around police departments as a community service officer, as a radio dispatcher, and civilian head of the police department. I want more community and police interactions and ride-alongs like Tom Potter started when he was our police chief. I want meetings and proactive community involvement accenting our common goals, which is a safe, vibrant community that stands together at all times and are not polarized when some unfortunate tragedy occurs. I dream of vibrant downtowns next and regional centers, and while many may feel this statement contradicts itself, I believe we can do it. But we have to quit doing a lot of our major shopping in New York, Seattle. I'll start again. A lot of our major shopping in New York, Seattle, Atlanta, Paris, Chicago, London, Dallas, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And if I missed you, I meant you. While there are people who took Don Mazziotti on, our executive director of the Portland Development Commission, and gave him a hard time when he told the truth recently about how many businesses have located here in the last year, there are plenty of people, like my company, who want to continue to do business here. And I'd rather we spent our time, rather than putting pressure on Don, which we will do for you, and gladly, I would like you to put pressure on Don, my colleagues, and me at the Portland Development Commission and our staff and other like organizations around the state to encourage local startup companies and entrepreneurial ventures with great possibilities. I want you to force us and push us to attract Neiman Marcus and Macy's, the Cheesecake Factory, Harrods, IKEA, Marshall Fields, Crate and Barrel, and the types of retail catering to our creative and hip-hop generations. These actions leverage hundreds of other developments. What's the message? If you and I want it, we need to declare it. We need to invest in it. We need to go after it. We need to believe in it. We need to vote for it. We need to debate about it. We need to protest for it. We need to advocate for it and make it happen. That's what we need to do. The message is also that it's easy to lob grenades from the bleachers. But we must epitomize the words of Theodore Roosevelt when he said, "It's not the critic who counts, not the person who points out how the strong person stumbled, nor how the doer of deeds could have done them better, but the credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with blood and sweat and dust, who strives valiantly and gives himself or herself again and again for a worthy cause, who at their best, they know the triumph of high achievement, and who at their worst, if he or she fails, they at least fail while daring greatly, so that his place or her place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never knew victory nor defeat." Do I think this is all about us? No, but I think it starts with us. I think our stellar Oregon delegation, from Senators Wyden and Smith to Representatives DeFazio, Blumenauer, Hooley, Walden, and Wu, supported by their excellent staff members in Washington, D.C., Salem, Portland, and throughout the state, would love to see a renaissance in our thinking, our vision, and our implementation strategies. I know we've started from the Oregon Business Plan to various business roundtables around the state, to the numerous initiatives taking shape in cities and counties and villages all over this great land we call Oregon. They're all inclusive of stakeholders and are electrifying in their possibilities. But the message is that I too am willing to do my part. I too am willing to do my part to work for the preservation of what we are and implement strategies for what we shall be. For like you, I want my children and grandchildren and the generations to come to talk about us in glowing ways in the decades and scores of years from now, because we rolled up our sleeves, we went to work constructively for their future. What must we do? Let's approach this Oregon century with open minds, open hearts, and yes, where needed, open checkbooks. Open your arms and find your place and make your contribution to public service as a paid staff person or as a volunteer. Make it your business to support a nonprofit organization with your money or your time. If none of these work for you, then read to your children. Work with them to help them be curious about people who don't look like them, but don't teach them that hating people is okay, because it's not. Teach them to be good, loving, and forgiving and life-giving citizens. If we do this, I believe that over time, we will evolve from the depths of conservatism and liberalism to Oregonism. In the end, that's really what matters. Are these dreams and hopes easy? No. Are they necessary? I think so. Over the past several minutes, with your help, I've taken you on a journey from our concerns and worries to our hopes and joys, and in a few more minutes, my job will be done. Whether you like this speech or deride this speech, my basic message is that we must remember that if it is to be, it starts with me. I'm trying to challenge you enough so that you understand that as you leave this lunch, be you happy as you leave this lunch, melancholy as you leave this lunch, mad as the devil and will never show up for another speech I give as you leave this lunch, I want you to be inspired enough to go do something about it, because anything positive and constructive will be better than business as usual. Am I optimistic about our future? Yes, I am, because I happen to be not only an optimist, I happen to sincerely cleave to hope. What gives me the right and audacity to say all these things? You see, my friends, I was born to a teenage mother who was born to a teenage mother. There were several people who told me what I wouldn't become. There were lots of people who tried to talk me down, and in those days, if they had it 100 years ago when I was born, there would have been such a thing as calling me a child at risk. But you see, I didn't believe any of those kind of things. You see, I was raised in 2 foster homes and 2 orphan homes. I've worked every day of my life since I was 9 years old, and my folks caught the early bus. When I was born, they told my first foster mother, Minnie Vance, that I wouldn't walk because of my physical deformities. My arms and my legs were turned around in the wrong direction. They said if I did walk, the doctors did, that if I did walk, I would walk with a limp. But you see, you couldn't convince Minnie Vance of that. You see, she only had a high school education and knew firsthand about how people tried to keep her down. She didn't care what the doctor said, because she believed that when you're down, if you can look up, you ought to be able to get up. And so in our house, long after everybody else went to sleep at night, she would get me out of my crib. She'd lay me on a bed and heat up some olive oil. Not something that the doctors ever talked about. Not something that was prescribed in medicine. But you see, Minnie Vance was determined that this little boy was not going to walk with a limp. So she heated up that olive oil, and she would sing and pray as she rubbed my legs and arms with the heated oil. This was her routine and her determination to do her part. While I didn't walk until I was 3 years old, her dream of me walking with no limp came to pass, and here I stand many years later without one trace of a limp. My only regret is that I never got a chance to thank her, because she died in an automobile accident when I was 7 years old. However, somewhere today, I feel her spirit and joy, and believe, knowing what's happened in my life since those days, she's, I hope, saying, "Well done, my son." I too had a taste of some of that same spirit when I graduated from high school. After beating a stuttering speech pattern and being a good student, I had to get the signature of the woman who directed the orphan home to sign my papers for me to attend Oberlin College. I was one of few students from the orphan home who graduated from high school that year. When I asked for her signature, she looked at me with the most disgusted look she could muster, and she said, "A nigger doesn't have a right to go to Oberlin College." And mostly due to divine intervention, I looked back at her, and with a smile I said, without hesitation, "I haven't a clue what a nigger is, but I'm going to Oberlin College." And while I forgave her, she was not a stumbling block to me, but she was a stepping stone. She was inspiration for me to keep on going and partly responsible for my internal spirit to strive to higher heights. I'm sure if I asked for a show of hands right here today, there are many similar stories in this room of people who have conquered amazing things in their lives, and there'd not be a dry eye, I believe, in the house. My challenge and my reason for sharing all those things with you is to say that if they could do it, and if I could do it, and if we could do it, against daunting odds, I believe that every one of us has a role to play in making this state better. My challenge is for us to find that will to win within us and use it to make Oregon a better Oregon. We must work for a brighter future and secure a better set of circumstances for now and the generations to come. Will it happen overnight? I don't think so. But with the words of a sampler that used to be in our kitchen, that we learned that yard by yard, life was hard, but inch by inch, it's a cinch. It's with these thoughts, these ideas, these hopes and these dreams and hard work that I remind us that what we're challenged to do is similar to a passage at the end of Tennyson's poem Ulysses. You see, Ulysses is old at this point, and he's headed out to sea for one last voyage. He's rallying his fellow soldiers and sailors and says to them, though we are not that spirit and strength in days of old that moved heaven and earth, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic strength, made weak by time and faith, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. So let's go back home tonight. Let's go back to Baker City, to John Day, to Eugene, to Redmond, to Coos Bay, to Newport, Boardman and Coquille, to Christmas Valley, Grants Pass, and all over the metro area, remembering that I may have been the deliverer of the speech today and the crafter of a dream. However, we need you, your team, your neighborhood, your nonprofit organization, your company, your educational institution, your union, your party, your family to complete the tapestry. Are you ready? Are you willing? Will you roll up your sleeves? Will you take the risk? If it's too daunting a task, remember that someone said the journey of 1,000 miles still begins with only one step. There is, my friends, a clarion call to men and to women, to boys and to girls all over this state. You and I must answer. Let's do it now. Thank you very much.
I don't know about you, but I feel energized. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves. But first, we're going to have questions. So, as you all know, City Club members have the privilege of asking questions of our guests. It's not too late to sign up as a City Club member today. But our first question will be asked by Mike Burton, who's our board host. Mike has a public service career of 25 years, including at the House of Representatives and at Metro, and he's currently at Vice Provost and Executive Director of Extended Studies at PSU. So after Mike's done, or while Mike's asking his questions, please line up behind the mics, ask your questions in 3 minutes or less. It needs to be a question. Thanks. Excuse me, 3 minutes, 30 seconds or less. Thanks.
You are enthusiastic. Matt, amen, amen, and hallelujah. That was just, I'll tell you, every time I've heard Matt talk, he's always delightful, he's inspiring, and he's always on point. And that's just a delightful way for us to end this series. Matt, the fastest growing population segment which are coming into Oregon are folks aged 24 to 35. And they're coming here, I think, because they see opportunities for us. And as a CEO, if you were going to give advice or directions to other CEOs, agency directors, those kinds of things, on how to help these folks not only, once they came to work for you, be productive people in the company, but to become real Oregonians, to get engaged. What kind of advice or direction would you give those folks?
Well, I'm about to answer that question looking at some of the 24 to 35-year-olds in my own company sitting here who are probably really wanting to know what this answer is going to be like. Am I going to give you the textbook, or am I going to tell you the truth about what we do? First of all, I love the question, because I do think that it's very important that in our work lives that we do everything we can to be accommodating of the group of people and the demographics of people that are working for us. First of all, I think it's extremely important to think about such things as flexible schedules, about allowing people to work from home, about making sure, now by the way, there are a couple of these things that you all don't have, so, you know, that's just the way. And I don't know, you may not get it either. But the ability to do that. I think one of the things that we do is really listen to what this population wants. And one of the things I've really loved and enjoyed is that at our place we've got a suggestion box, which we literally has been there for the 13 years, I think, since our company started. And actually, it's very well used, and people know they can put their name on it or they can do it anonymously. And only I have the key to the box. And many of them will send now electronic messages and things of that nature. But the point being made is, I don't have all the answers, but I do know that I'm going to listen to them. And what I think people have really enjoyed is the fact that we don't just say we're going to listen, we do listen. And I think a lot of what we've got to do is get out of our own way. I'll try it again. Get out of our own way, CEOs, managers, leaders in organizations, and really recognize that the more you give the opportunity to spread the wealth of knowledge in your organization and take all the responsibility when something's wrong, but give all the credit when something's right, I think is an ingredient to be successful, in part.
Hi, Tamsin Wassell, City Club member. I couldn't help but hear you mention tax reform a couple of times, and for those of you who know me from the club, I spent 4 years helping to write the tax reform report for the City Club. So I guess my question has to do with this past election and the message that you got, I guess, from this past election. What is it that you think is the road to tax reform after hearing the kind of resounding no on taxes in Oregon?
Well, Tamsin, I love the question. I think, first of all, I have been a strong believer that one of the things we ought to do, on the one hand, is to be very clear in understanding the Oregon electorate, and that is that if we don't understand what you're doing with our dollars already, we're not going to give you more dollars to keep doing things that we have absolutely no clue what you're up to. And I think that's part of the message. I think that what we need to do is really let people know, if I were leading that charge, what I would have done, and nobody asked me, so I can just say it now, and this isn't Monday morning quarterbacking, and I'm not also saying that I'm right, but what I think I would have done is suggested that we need an education campaign that really is clear about what's going on with state tax dollars right now. Where are they going? Secondly, before you ask people to pass Measure 30, why not show people that we're going to take the steps right now to make the state government far more efficient and effective before we ask you about Measure 30, okay? And I think that it's important to do that, and it may sound simple as all get out, and maybe it's because I'm a city manager and that's the way I used to run my cities, but that's exactly what I believe you've got to do, is engage your public to help them understand what it is you're trying to do. I think the last thing I would say is that, in all honesty, I've said this before, I'll probably get in real trouble saying this as openly as I am on all these airwaves, but if I were governor for a day, I'd do something like John Engler did in Michigan. You know, this was a big deal. Tax reform wouldn't happen. The legislature was stymied. He just went in one day and said, you know what, we're just cutting all property taxes and funding of schools through the property taxes in the state of Michigan. Just one fell swoop, just quit. Right? So everybody's property tax bill went down. Everybody went nuts saying, oh my gosh, this is just crazy. And I guess my feeling was what he did is create a crisis. And my sense is, to some degree, we almost have to do that sometimes to really make real work, real reform happen, is that we have to create the crises to make it happen. I know I'll get in trouble. I didn't hear any amens on that. Doesn't really matter. I'm not on the ballot, so it doesn't really matter. Right? Please.
Ray Polani, a City Club member. Mr. Hennessee, it seems to me that to develop an affordable Portland with quality, we need to move a lot of people in this area other than by automobile. And I'm wondering if PDC, the Portland Development Commission, is ready to spearhead a subway to do that, to move a lot of people competitively, and by 2010.
I love it, and by 2010. Ray, I've been told that as a city club member that if I were up here talking about flowers, you would figure out how to get it to mass transit. You know, I mean, in all honesty, I think the concern about transit is a very important one, and I don't know that I would specifically go immediately to the idea of a subway system underneath the ground, but I would say that PDC does have and does play a very important role, not necessarily leading always, but being a partner to the transportation efforts in the area, by the way. And quite frankly, if you think about some of the things that we've done in addition to the work that I think John Russell and others were very responsible for as it relates to, in John's leadership, and it relates to the downtown, I want to call it tram, but that's not right. What's it called, John? Not the MAX, but the streetcar. The streetcar. Excuse me. I think more of those opportunities are really, really important. And all I can tell you is that I know that Don Mazziotti and my colleagues, Commissioner Wilson, who's here, Commissioner Blomgren, who's here, are committed to being real supporters of public transportation. I don't know about going under the street. Isn't that right, Doug? I just wanted to make sure I spoke for you. Yes, that's good. When he smiles, that's yes. There you go. There you go. Please.
Bob Geary, City Club
Bob.
member. My question is about the rise in juvenile gang violence. Not that I expect you to be a prophet, but what would you say to the city to reduce the rise in gang violence?
Well, first of all, I'd say that there are a number of efforts underway, and I applaud the work that the police department's doing, that the city and the county, I think, are involved in a number of efforts, quite frankly, and I think this is a very, very difficult issue. Let's face it, I mean, I'm a believer that part of this stuff goes all the way back to preschool, all the way back to prenatal care, and I really believe very strongly in that, and the ability to really raise your children singing to them while they're in the womb, reading to them while they're in the womb. As crazy as that sounds, the medical science has already proven that that really does matter. And giving your child a preschool education and to really work them through the elementary and public education system and stuff like that, or private if you choose to. What I think, based on your question, is that we can't obviously go backward and do that, but I would tell you that what I would do as I think about, again, the Oregon century, the next 100 years, is I would propose that our school system literally be preschool to community college, because I feel very strongly that we ought to have the broadest amount of opportunity for children to remain in school as long as they can. Amen belongs right there, by the way. But given what we've got right now, what I think is that we still need to, on the one hand, listen to what the concerns of the gang members are, because they do have real concerns. We need to listen to and work with the people who are in jail, who literally, honestly, I believe, some of them can't help being there, because they have lived through a system, they have seen things, they have lived in an environment. And let me tell you, by the way, I'm telling you something about stuff that I grew up with myself. Mine was really a matter of choice. I was just too stupid to think that getting in trouble was the right thing to do, okay? My belief is that I had nobody who was backing me. I didn't have any mom or dad standing behind me, and I knew if I didn't go out there and get it, I was in serious trouble. But I think that a number of these young people have lost hope, and they lost hope a long time ago. I think some of these things that we're talking about in terms of building better race relations have something to do with it. When a black person walks in a white neighborhood, and just because they're black, and people start turning their heads and stuff like that, that's real stuff. It doesn't have to just be black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, whatever it is real stuff. Why do people get nervous? Because they're worried about somebody breaking in their house, breaking in their car and stuff like that. Could be me walking in your neighborhood. Amen. So the point being made is you really don't know, but I would say this. I think we've got a serious problem on our hand. I don't know the real answer. I know that it's going to take a lot of us together to work together to try to figure it out. And I think at the same time, there are a number of nonprofit organizations that are trying to work on this issue too, but we need to come together to try to really figure that one out. But I think, finally, that it's not going to be solved without the input of a gang member in the first place. Please.
Hi, Matt. Chris Smith, City Club member. I didn't get to work from home until I turned 40. But I've made good use of that flexibility, and one of the ways that I've made use of that is to chair the Citizens Advisory Committee for Portland Streetcar. And Portland Development Commission has been a great partner for Streetcar, and we're engaged together in trying to get Streetcar not under the river, but over the river to the east side, at least as a start.
Exactly.
My question is about PDC, and PDC has been able to do some great things with urban renewal districts. And I think we've learned recently that urban renewal cuts both ways, and it's part of perhaps our tax reform picture and a lot of debate about whether we should extend some of these districts. So my question is, can PDC carve out a role in economic development that's not dependent on urban renewal? Can we find a new way to look at the economic development problem?
Well, I think first of all, I think it's a good question, Chris. It is Chris, right? Yeah. I think that one of the challenges that PDC has is recognizing the tax increment financing as a way and a means, rather, of financing improvements and being a part of economic development is yet only one piece. And if you look at the number of projects in any given district, it far outdistances our ability to fund them, even when John Russell was the chair. You know what I mean? So I really want to make sure that this is something that's gone on for a long time. One of the things I think we really must do is focus on trying to find new sources of financing, partly through the sort of tax credits that I think the Portland Development Commission has been working very hard on with the federal government. Also creating, I think, the opportunity for more work with a regional approach, which I know city people who are here, there's no city council person here, they get upset with me when I start talking about region stuff, but it's really important that we look at it from that perspective. And then quite frankly, some of what I suggest is that what we ought to do is really come together and say, if this is a region, who, by the way, my belief is, if something great happens for Lake Oswego, it's great for Portland. If something great happens in Hillsborough, it's still great for Portland. If there's a way for us to pool some resources to literally say, how do we come together in a very sort of take our ingenuity, if you will, come together and put together a pot of money and financing and stuff like that to do some things that we haven't even done yet. Dream is what I'm really trying to say, is to make some of that happen. I think that that's an opportunity. I really do. Yeah. Mr. Kramer.
Bill Kramer, City Club member. Matt, in your speech, you talked about economic development, not only in Portland, but in other parts of the state. A lot of times in the past, there have been conflicts between the city and the outlying cities, or between the Eastern Oregon and Western Oregon. What can we do? What are the keys, in your mind, to economic development, not just in Portland, but also in the metro area as a whole, and in the small towns and rural areas throughout the state?
Well, thank you for that very easy question. I appreciate it. I think a few things. First of all, and I don't think I've got the total answer to this, I think, first of all, I look to the leadership of the governor, who I care a great deal about and think is doing a tremendous job, and looking to the role that Marty Brantley plays, by the way, in the Oregon Office of Economic and Community Development, and really doing some things that really say, on the one hand, how do we deal with economic development as yet a part of the whole workforce development in our state, so that we can get more people back to work? How can we marshal the resources of these various groups, whether it's, what's the group called here, Stan, that has all the money that comes from the federal government, the $55 million for workforce stuff, the workforce investment boards and stuff like that around the state, and really couple those efforts together. Now, on the one hand, we're really talking about, in my view, an agenda sometimes that looks like a mile long. What I would say to every one of these workforce investment groups around the state, why can't we focus on a good, solid 3 things that we really want to get done? Focus those dollars that come to the state, which is in excess of $55 million or so around the state. Couple that with the efforts that the Economic Development Department is already trying to put together and say, how do we make something great happen? Now, to the larger question of how do you do it in urban and rural and all this stuff, I think we've had these problems for a long time. I think they're going to be here for a little bit longer, but I'm a believer that what happens in Coquille is important to me as an Oregonian. The success of Sisters is important to me as a person who lives in Portland. You know what I mean? And I think we've got to remember that the more we inextricably bound ourselves to one another, the more our success and our failures matter to each other. And that's part of what we do, going back even to the 2010 question that was raised earlier, and that is, as long as people are tied together and are interdependent, the more opportunity for us to really do some great things together. Please.
Hi, thank you very much for your remarks.
One more? Yes.
I'm Carol Witherell, City Club member, and thank you for inspiring us to your saying, if it is to be, it starts with me. I would like to add, if it's worth the fuss, it starts with us. So,
I love that.
in that vein, I'm thinking of a challenge that we have in Oregon as well as in the rest of the country. I think we're in crisis. It is here, I believe, and I think that social agencies and education has risen to the challenge of accountability. And I'm concerned about what I consider draconian cuts to services to low-income children and families. And at the same time, a rising, escalating practice of greed and glamorized violence all around us in our culture. So my question is, in view of this challenge and cynicism about government when we need hope, and I too am afflicted with hope, what is a specific way that Oregonians could launch the kind of civic dialogue that you've described that gets us past the barriers and reminds us of our responsibility to build a sustainable democracy?
First of all, I really love the question, and I would say in part, and I say truly in part, we need to show up at city council meetings and show up at county commission meetings. We need to really come together and say, what is it we really want the city to do? What do we want the region to be focused on? And let's take an issue like affordable housing, if you will, as a potential issue, which I think is on the minds of a number of people. And that is that I think that the efforts of affordable housing have become as great as they have is because people have seen that as their issue. Not just Eric Stinn on the city council, but a number of people have. Not just Diane Lynn and Serena Cruz, who's here today, on the county commission, but many people have. You know what I mean? And I think that one, we distill and determine what do we want to do. Secondly, we put action behind it and say to the Oregonian and editorial boards and others that this is really important to us and really important to the people in Salem. And then, by the way, one of the things I would do is also think about the challenge you give to candidates who run for office and say to them, if these things aren't important to you, Tom, then I'm sorry, I'm just messing with you, Tom, you know that. You know, but I think it's really important. If we want accountability in government, we've got to keep the people we are voting for office accountable. And that's really part of what it's about. That's why I didn't like term limits. I've always felt I want my right to vote that person in or to turn that person out. I think that's part of it. The other thing I think is that we can't be, in my view, we can't be lazy about this. We've got to be real about this. We really do, and we've got to marshal our resources together and make it happen. I'll use one other quick analogy, and I hope you'll forgive me. It's a political one, but I'm not trying to make a political speech. I'm just saying that something happened with the rise of Howard Dean as a presidential candidate, that a number of people who did not go to the polls in the past, a number of people who were disillusioned by the process, they came from everywhere. And if email could get 5,000 people to the Portland State University in the middle of August where we all gathered, that's a shocking thing, but it says to me that something big is going on. And I guess my feeling is if we can somehow capture what are some of those things that they did, again, has nothing to do with your political persuasion, it has something to do with the effectiveness of their campaign to literally get people out and make them make a great showing for Oregon. Those are some of the things I would say. Thank you. Thank you all very much.